Does your newsfeed make you angry? Are you sick of posts about scandals and fear mongering? Well, it's time to detox your newsfeed. You've joined the judgment free community of AI Parenting Live. We help families move from screen time to quality time by helping them understand that AI is really just a system about replicating the past. If we understand the past, we'll be surprised at how well it predicts the future. You may have heard of Facebook's secret mood manipulation experiment on 700,000 people in 2014. They were studying something called emotional contagion. That's like emotion, that's kind of like a virus. They asked the question, would manipulating the content people saw on their newsfeed lead them to change the status updates that they made? And the answer was a resounding yes. More negative news feeds leads to more negative status messages, and more positive news feeds leads to more positive status messages. So today we'll show how to manipulate your own mood and mindset by detoxing your news feed and your video feeds. This skill is part of the Foundations of AI course that I'm offering at aiparenting.live. So if you want to learn how to move from screen time to quality time, and you want to know the skills that are going to help your children thrive in the future, visit aiparenting.live. Now, to understand our news feeds today, we need to first go a little bit back to the history of tabloids. The three questions that we're wondering about today are, number one, why does my newsfeed make me angry? Number two, why is there so much fake news out there? And the third one is, what are 5 ways that I can detox my newsfeed? And so let's get started right away. So the first one is, why does my newsfeed make me angry? And I think I've added some little tabs to help me out here. So, in the 1940s, it was an exciting time for a young writer in Australia. As a boy whose father worked in news, he learned how certain headlines tended to sell better. And people loved buying headlines related to sports, to scandals, and celebrity relationships. Headlines that interrupted patterns, left the reader curious, and told people what they wanted to hear, even if it wasn't the truth, tended to fly off the shelves. So when his father gave him control of his Adelaide newspaper in the 1950s, he turned these editorial best practices into the way that they did business. And so, just as a heads up, if you have any questions as well, we're live, so I'm happy to answer any of them. Hopefully you can all hear me. Let me know if there's any problems with the sound. Welcome. So I'll be posting on a regular basis. So right now we are talking about the history. So why does my newsfeed make me angry? Question mark. Okay, so this method of basically tabloid headlines turned out to be very successful. Newspapers were flying off the shelves. And by the 1960s, this local newspaper was looking to buy news companies throughout Australia and around the world. In fact, by the 1970s, he became a U.S. citizen so that he could own U.S. television stations, which grew into television networks like Fox in the 1980s and sports programs like the NFL in the 1990s. So, the broad reach of his newspapers meant that he held great power over political elections in Australia, the UK, and the United States. His support was credited with victories leading up to the elections of US presidents such as Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. This influence also had a direct impact on news regulations, such as those prohibiting one person from owning both a television station and a newspaper in the same market. So you can imagine, hey, we let you win the election. Why don't you just relax some of those regulations that we have on news? That's exactly what happened. Now, by now, you probably already guessed that I'm talking about media magnate Rupert Murdoch, who has been credited with inventing the modern tabloid by The Economist. You may be wondering, what does this have to do with AI and what we see in our news feeds? Very interesting question. So, well, these exact same principles were applied to the internet in the 2000s when Murdoch's News Corp acquired the internet social media platform MySpace and later IGN, or the International Gaming News Organization. Many media companies, including Group 9 that owns Thrillist, Now This, Seeker, they all apply the same modern tabloid-style headlines that worked so well in the 1950s. I mean, if it worked back then, why do I need to change it? You keep doing what works. So if you're curious about why your newsfeed has articles related to scandals or curiosity-driven headlines that keep you hooked for hours on end, you have the modern tabloid to thank. So I hope that's making sense. Of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. I love reading the comments. Happy to participate. And really, this is about you. If you have any questions, I'm here. So, okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is. So this section, that I just spoke about, was about how media today on the internet is the same as the past. Now let's look at this thing that's slightly different. We call it the rise of fake news. And so the question that we ask is, well, why is there so much fake news? So in the ACM Chi 2018 conference, I had the privilege to interview Wikimedia Foundation's Sue Gardner, who did an insightful presentation on the rise of fake news. The sales of supermarket tabloids has long indicated that people value headlines that fit what they want to see or what they suspected. I always knew that was true, even if it isn't true, it's not true. So let's look at what Sue Gardner had to say, and let's talk about it. So are you ready? Here we go. Okay.
And of course, she's a very proud recipient of the Ian Catt Medal of Internet Awesomeness for defending internet freedom. So welcome to the stage, Sue Gardner. It looks like Mark Zuckerberg flying to Washington testifying in Congress. It looks like the general counsels of Twitter, Facebook, and Google also flying to Washington and testifying before multiple Senate committees. It looks like full-page advertisements like this one in daily newspapers in the United States and the United Kingdom, with Facebook apologizing for not doing a good enough job of safeguarding user data. It looks like this woman, the UN Special Investigator for Myanmar, saying that Facebook played a determining role in contributing to genocide in that country. And it looks like the government of Sri Lanka talking about hardline Buddhist groups using Facebook to distribute hate propaganda. This was one of the first indicators to me that I was wrong. I don't know if you folks remember this quote. Jeff Hammerbacher was one of the first employees at Facebook, and I think he was the first person to do analytics for Facebook. And I remember in sometime like 2007 or 2008, I had moved to Silicon Valley in 2007 to run the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the nonprofit that operates Wikipedia, if you don't know that. When social media became the primary distribution mechanism for news, what that opened up was a new business opportunity. And probably most of us, many of us in the room, know the story of the Macedonian teenagers, right? purpose was really just to make money, because if you got enough social sharing, you could put ads against it, you could make a profitable business. I think if I remember correctly, the kids were making something like, I don't know, a couple $100,000 a year or something. So you could actually, make a living wage doing this. The emotion that most predictably and consistently drives social sharing turns out to be anger. And the most efficient way to routinize the production of anger to encourage social sharing is by making hyper-partisan news. So you make political material that is highly partisan, designed to provoke anger or outrage or some surge of strong emotion. People share it on the internet, they share it on social media, and you can make money doing that. And they were the most popular news source on Twitter during the campaign. And I'll say it again, I'll kind of underline, this is stuff that is false, it is not useful information, it's not helping anybody make a good decision. There were half as many working journalists in the United States as there had been 15 years earlier. And so what that means is you had a news media which was half the resource, half the energy, half the strength of what it normally had been in recent American history. He said, the recommendations algorithm at YouTube is designed to optimize watch time. There is no reason that it would show content that is good for kids. If it does show content that's good for kids, that's just a coincidence. Again, this is Ed Williams, who was co-founder of Twitter and now runs Medium. And Ed said this to the New York Times. He said, the trouble with the internet is that the internet rewards extremes. So say that you're driving down the road and you see a car crash. Of course you look, everybody looks at a car crash. The internet interprets that to mean that people want car crashes, and so it tries to give us more of them.
Okay. That's good. Like let's just pause there, because there's a lot that she went through. Sue explained why fake news tends to be spread more virally than real news. It fits with what people want to hear. Titles like Popeye's manager arrested for allegedly dipping chicken in cocaine-based flour to increase business sales, or death row inmate eats an entire Bible as his last meal, is way more compelling than real-world headlines like Olympics represent Djokovic's time to shine brightest. Right? Like, which one's more compelling to you? The fake news one. The fake news one is way more compelling. And an AI that is set up to get more comments and shares and watch time will not be fine-tuned to look for things like fake news. And this is one of the reasons why tens of thousands of human reviewers had to be employed by big tech companies like YouTube and Facebook, as AI often has a hard time determining the difference between real and fake news. In fact, I had the opportunity or the pleasure to interview Professor Sarah Roberts on this topic. And maybe, if I can pull this up, let's see what she had to say. Hold on.
Why did Bill Nye say that critical thinking is the most important skill for young people to develop? And who reviews all of the news and posts that we see on our social media feeds? What is the right amount of social media that is good for our mental health? I'm Dr. E.T., and this is Ed on EdTech. I was at the California EdTech Professionals Association conference with our partner ClearTouch, and a lot of our keynotes were very focused on the need to teach critical thinking in school. But why is this so important when AI automatically checks everything that we post? Sarah Roberts had some eye-opening insights into the people who are responsible for reviewing our social media feeds.
So wait, you're telling me that what Mark Zuckerberg is saying isn't quite exactly the truth?
I'm saying that a lot of the platforms that we use every day, whether it's Facebook or whether it's something that seems as benign and neutral as Google search, which is literally a white box that you just type into, has all sorts of complex socio-cultural and political values baked in no small part because they're associated with economics and particularly with revenue generation. But if we think about that apparatus, that policy apparatus in a bigger picture, I mean, we're really talking about a platform's value system or its politics. People who were working as these kinds of content evaluators were located actually all over the world. So the first group I encountered and became aware of was actually located in agricultural central Iowa. You mentioned the Philippines. That is a hugely important hub for this kind of work and for other kinds of outsourced knowledge work, particularly in the context of the United States and North America, because of many decades of long-standing relationships, let's put it, between the U.S. and the Philippines. The U.S., of course, occupied the Philippines for most of the 20th century. Young people who are trying to navigate these spaces that are filled with tons of garbage. The more sophisticated our teachers can be and our librarians can be about this ecosystem, the better prepared we are to help our young people navigate and really understand what's good and what's not so good about the information landscape they're in.
Despite the advances in AI, much of the content on the internet is still evaluated by people under increasing time pressure. And what this means is that for us viewers, it's up to us to determine whether or not the content that we see and evaluate if it's true or not.
Okay, so I hope that's helpful. While it does help to have people moderating news, it doesn't mean that we won't see fake news in our newsfeed. I still regularly get fake news sent to me, and I still rely on fact-checking tools like Snopes or PolitiFact that looks into the validity of these sensational headlines. Okay, so I hope that helps. Let me know. This is a good time for a little bit of a pause. Can you hear me? Let me know if you have any questions about questions about what I just posted. Or my question is like, what are you curious about? Maybe I should change that. Or what are you wondering? What are you wondering? Let me know. I would love to know what you're wondering. What are you wondering? Heard that sometimes this is a better way of calling it instead of like, what questions do you have? Because people often say, oh, I don't have any questions, because I know it. What are you wondering? Might be a better. Yeah. So I'd like that as a way of evaluating and a way of talking about it, because this is very important. Like, Sarah Roberts has gone into great depth just about how our content is moderated. And she's also looked at, the kinds of people who do it. How much time do they have? What are the guidelines that they have? And of course, there is bias in that as well. It is not a perfect system. It is potentially better than using an AI to try to detect fake news, because this is a weak point of AI. It's one of the reasons why we have such a high investment in so many people, like tens of thousands of people who need to review content on a regular basis. But it's not perfect, and fake news can still go through. This is one of the hardest things for a computer to determine, is like, what's the difference? All I know is that this content is really, really popular. And so this is one of the reasons why it tends to get a lot more views. I hope that makes some sense. All right. So now let's look at 5 ways. 5 ways that you can detox your newsfeed today. So the 5 ways that you can detox your newsfeed focuses on how AI works. So like I said at the beginning, AI is looking at the history of our watch time, the comments and the shares. And so the concept is that what was interesting to you in the past will be interesting to you in the future. And this means that it tries to keep you in the mindset that you had maybe 2 or 5 or maybe even 10 years ago. And so you'd be surprised at how much your newsfeed tells about your past interests. So just go and take a look at either your Facebook newsfeed or look at the YouTube recommendations, and you'd be surprised at how much of your history appears right there. It's trying to repeat what you did in the past, what you watched in the past. So for example, just looking at my own YouTube recommended videos, I could see videos on tech, on politics, on video creation. And so what can we do if we want to change the way we think about ourselves and the world? Well, remember the Facebook mood experiment. This is very important because we're not more important and we're not more, we're not more capable. We're not more capable than our environment. Even video thumbnails of videos that you don't watch can still impact your thinking. So that's why it's so important for us to look at detoxing our newsfeed. And so the first recommendation that I have is to, and it seems kind of extreme, but it's to start a new profile, brand new profile. Not enough people do this. And this underrated detox that doesn't even require you to delete your existing social media or email addresses is extremely powerful. Start a brand new email and social media accounts. Just starting that can have a huge impact on your own mindset. I mean, just imagine being able to choose content that relates to your current goals without being drawn into things that you had watched in the past. It's the equivalent of being born again on the internet. As far as AI is concerned, you are a new person with new goals. And so, for example, when I started AI parenting, I created a brand new email address and a brand new YouTube channel, rather than working off of my existing profiles. I only watched videos related to comments about big tech, privacy, and AI, and this would expose me to really great content that I've been able to share with you live. So the first concept, I hope that makes sense, 5 detox tips for your news feed. So 5 steps to detox. I hope that is making sense. So that's the first one. So the first one is starting a new profile. Okay. So maybe I'll put start a new profile. Start a new profile. Okay, cool. Now, number 2 is to mute toxic friends. Maybe you have like a big profile or you have a big following and you want to keep your existing profile. And that's no problem. If that's the case, then one of the best ways may be to remove or mute friends that post mostly negative news that impacts your mindset. You can like them as a person, but you can also like them from a distance, as George Valenzuela has once told me. And so you don't need to follow their every move. And I get it. Like there's a fear of loss, especially on platforms like Instagram, where if you unfollow people, you have to ask their permission again to follow again. So it feels like, oh, there's this lost opportunity if I unfollow someone. But that said, if you don't feel comfortable unfriending someone, you can always mute their posts, and they're not aware that you've muted their posts. But the key thing here is that studies have shown that we are greatly influenced by the 5 people that we are closest to. And if you created an account with only 5 friends, well, who would you want those people to be? Choose wisely, because we can't control the impact that those posts have on our unconscious thoughts. Like we see the image, maybe we don't watch the video, we don't click on the post, but just seeing it is enough to have an impact. And we know this because of the Facebook study. It already showed that you don't need to click on a bunch of posts for people to change people's mood. And so Okay. So this method of like starting a new account, it works. Um, it works really well because you can choose who you want to follow rather than just have a bunch of updates that are not helping you. So sometimes it's easier to start with a brand new account than it is to go and, oh, I gotta like unfriend everybody. So the new account method can be a way to help with that. Okay, so it kind of like is a step-by-step process. So mute toxic friends. Hope that's making sense. All right. So next one. Engage with the content that you like, or maybe engage with the content that is like what you want to become. Because often it's aspirational rather than, oh, I just like it. It's not kind of interest-based. It's often like you're trying to become a person. So now that you've created the profile and you've chosen your friends that you think are really going to help you, the next step is to engage with the people that you want to connect with the most. These could be influencers that you really admire, or they could be groups that show you what your interests are, or they help you accelerate your goals. In any case, this is a very powerful technique because not only are you watching fewer things, but you're developing deeper relationships with fewer people and potentially the people that you want to be associating with the most. Because many people get so many things in their newsfeed, they don't have time to go and check everything out. Whereas in this case, you'll have more time on the people that you care about. And so spending more time on posts will tell the AI that you want to see more content like this. It will help put their content at the top of your feed. On some platforms like Twitter or YouTube, you can add a bell to be notified whenever a new post arrives. And of course, in Facebook and I think Instagram, there's this concept of close friends, which could do something similar. I don't know if it's exactly like every time there's a new post that you get to see it or you get notified, but it could be something that is very, very similar. So close friends is another good way of doing it. Remember our friends are not enough to determining remember the people that are our friends can also be used to determine what appears on your feed. So we do have to train the AI on content that you do like so that you'll be able to get more of it. For example, if meditation, like just spending a little bit of time relaxing, just focused on your thoughts, is a part of your morning routine, spend more time watching those posts, like them, and you'll have a steady stream of new meditation videos that you can use the next day. And so I've got a comment here from City Guy NYCE. Let's check it out. From Twitch, he says, "Hello, sir. I am new to your channel. Are you speaking of liking an image or content? Then that would trigger the AI on apps and websites?" Absolutely, City Guy. This is what helps train the AI. Imagine you've got to train the AI on what you like and what you don't like. Otherwise, it's just going to give you random stuff. And some of it may not be very relevant to you because they're based on what your friends like. And so if you don't want to see those things, it's really important to just tell the algorithms, yeah, I know my friends like that, but I don't like that. So that's not what I'm looking for. Now the question expands to, okay, great. So what if you're to do it on Instagram? And okay, so for example, this one, like Instagram, or you're seeing like a patterns at times with quotes. Absolutely. So the AI algorithm is looking at how you responded to posts with quotes on them. If you responded well, your Instagram feed, it's gonna like fill up with lots of posts with quotes in them. In fact, like the meme style of posts is a very popular one because it has the video and it has the text in it as well. And so if you start engaging with those types of posts, like that's a clear indication to the AI that that's what you're looking for. And if you don't want those types of posts, you gotta start like changing those things. Man, I remember like you just spend like a few seconds, just watching like the recommended list, and you watch certain types of posts a little bit longer, even though you don't click on any of them, and they instantly start thinking, no, he wants more of those posts. Like I noticed a few more milliseconds on that one. So this is hard, and it is a skill that we need to develop, but it's very, very important. It's a good question. Oh, I love this. So City Guy is still engaged. I love it. So yes, interesting. Do you work in the IT field and develop programs using them yourself? I've noticed that many times. So yes, I work in education and technology, and I've actually my first exposure to like AI systems was when I think it was in 2004, 2005, when I had a YouTube video that went viral. And that's the time where I realized that like I was doing AI in my PhD in computer science, but that was my first time that I got exposed to, wow, this is going to have a huge impact on our society. And it wasn't just the algorithms that really mattered. It was how are these algorithms going to impact people at scale? What does this mean for jobs? And so when I became a parent, I became really obsessed with this question of, what can we do to ensure that our kids thrive in the future? And it was this realization that over half of Gen Z workers are freelancing using AI platforms like Upwork and Uber. And so it was asking the question of what happens when your boss is an AI, not a person. I do feel like you've noticed this many times. I think a lot of people who work in the AI field kind of feel the same way. I just don't see a lot of people talking about it. That's why I was like, we need a channel. We need something to talk about it. So that's what AI parenting was created from. A lot of parents coming and saying, I'm really worried about the screen time that my kids are spending. And I'm worried about like the quality time that I have with them, the relationship I have with my kids. I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. Let me explain why. So love it. Thank you so much, City Guy. Appreciate it. So the next one that I also want to cover, because there's two more, is it seems really obvious when I write it this way, but it's still important to skip or mute content that you don't like or that doesn't fit with where you want to go in life. It doesn't match the person that you see yourself as. Just as it's important to engage with content that you like, it's also important to disengage with content that you don't like. This means limiting your watch time or pressing mute on posts that you don't want to see. This is not easy. I want to be super clear, because our suggestions may come from things that our friends like, which could be stuff that you are specifically trying to avoid. So it's not your fault that you're seeing these things. It could be just your friends like that. And so this is an exercise in self-regulation that is actually quite healthy. It's a skill. It makes you feel like you're in control of your newsfeed and that your newsfeed doesn't control you. Another benefit of this is that it can help you get immersed in the content that you need to watch rather than being torn away from content that is basically a distraction from your goals. So training our newsfeed, it's going to be this important skill on par with learning how to code or to meditate. It is very, very important. And so I love this. So I've got another comment in from City Guy. Thank you. And he's asking, that's a good question. Have you heard that a few people got fired recently, I believe, from Amazon due to AI saying that they're not productive enough as employees? Absolutely. In fact, Amazon's algorithm, like the big concern has been they even have posts that from Amazon that talk about, I think it was drivers who were like peeing in bottles in order to make sure that they didn't lose time because they were judged very much by an AI. This is what an AI mediated or managed future looks like. And it is not only applicable to workplaces like Amazon, but it also applies to education as well. Because if you ever go into, for example, like an AI proctoring type system, and these ones are like Proctorio, for example, has been notorious for this. They literally look at like, are you looking? Are you trying to cheat? Like they're doing all sorts of like algorithmic things, and it has been very, very difficult. Like in fact, some students, I remember there was a point where some Black students couldn't log into the online test, and they would fail the test because it wouldn't recognize them as people. Because of course, facial recognition algorithms are heavily biased against people with melanated or darker skin. And so that is a real concern, and I am concerned about it as well. And so that's why I often say that in this AI managed future, like knowing algorithms, knowing code, it's pretty much like knowing the law, and your data is pretty much like your vote. And so you want to be super careful about what kind of data you give to the different platforms. And that's what detoxing that we're talking about today is all about. It's about what kind of data are you sharing with these different algorithms, and how can I make it so that I don't just see all the stuff that I saw 5 years ago, 10 years ago, constantly distracting me or constantly putting me back into that old mode. We do need to seriously think about detoxing our own mindset. And one of the benefits I forgot to mention about starting a new account is that you get all your storage back. So some people store a lot of stuff on Google Drive, and guess what? You get a brand new Google Drive account, 15 gigabytes of like storing whatever you want. It's wonderful, actually. I have several accounts for that exact reason. It's like, I ran out of space on my Google Drive. Why not create a new one? Don't have to pay Google an annual fee for that. It's fantastic. So there's your tech tip for today. It's not all bad, right? Like sometimes it can be a very scary world if we don't know what we're doing. But if we do, and you have control, you'll find that you, as an individual, have so much more control over your news feed, over what you see, than ever before. And you can use that power and you can use that control in order to direct your life in surprisingly positive ways. And so that leads me into the next, and this is the fifth one, so I'm kind of at the last one. And you've heard this a million times, I'm sure, but I want to give a slightly different take on it. And that is delete social media apps off of your phone. Now, of course, you might not have time to actively manage your news feed. So another way to increase your productivity is to potentially install a Chrome extension called Kill the Facebook Newsfeed. This plugin allows you to still use groups and connect with other people on Messenger without the AI-powered distraction of the newsfeed. And I've seen people who have done this to great success. Author of the 4-Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss, he posted a video on how to use your phone so that it doesn't use you. And his advice was to just straight up delete the Facebook app from your phone. And I've seen many other successful YouTubers like Casey Neistat advocating for doing exactly the same. And so when these like top performers are advocating for it, we need to pay attention. There's something here. Now, I don't have I'll be honest with you, I don't have the notification insanity of somebody like Casey Neistat or Tim Ferriss. But I followed this practice myself, and I deleted Facebook from my phone. I'm a ADHD parent, and I can say that it's been really refreshing because I'm so easily distracted, probably more than most. And I found that most of what I need to do on social media, I could just straight up do it from like an iPad. I could do it quicker, in fact, from an iPad. So the social media apps that I didn't need on my phone, I just deleted them from my phone. So I deleted any social app that wasn't essential to my business and where I was going. All I'd suggest is try it. I'm pretty confident that the benefits you notice for your own mindset will mean that you won't feel this strong urge to go back. Like your life may be like so much in that news feed right now, but it doesn't have to be. And maybe you won't feel the strong need to go back. So I'm on the camp of delete your Facebook, delete the app. You don't have to like delete the, like I've noticed that deleting the account doesn't actually delete it. The data's still there. So I'm not advocating that, but I would advocate, like, if you don't need this app on your phone, there's a couple things that you need to know. And one of the important things is the beginning of your day and the end of your day is very, very important. And we ask so many people, what do you do at the beginning of your day? What do you do at the end of your day? And if what you do is, like, I just check my feed, I just check the news. Well, what if you saw something that was like really negative in terms of the news right at the beginning of your day? How would the rest of your day feel? You'd be thinking about that throughout the rest of your day. You'd be heavily influenced by what you see at the beginning of your day. And so take back control of your day, take back control of your life, take back your mornings, take back your life. Same thing at night. Like, what do we do right before we go to bed? Like, watch some social media, right? But this is the problem, is like, I was reading this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, where he says that willpower is kind of like this battery that starts off at the beginning of the day super full. And then over the time, like your willpower goes lower and lower and lower. And so you can imagine if you're watching social media at the end of your day, what happens to your willpower? You've got like no willpower, no resistance, to any of this stuff. So you're just going to be there just watching, scrolling, watching. Like, you will not stop. This is really, really bad for you, because imagine, like, are you going to be getting enough sleep? What are you going to be thinking about when you go to sleep? Very, very important. How is that going to impact your next day? Very, very important. So I often say, like, this is critical. Detoxing your mindset involves a lot of detoxing your feed, but also detoxing some of your habits that you may have. Let's take a look at what City Guy has to say. He goes, my day starts and ends with my phone and Instagram. Yeah, mine does too. Or mine did for a long time as well. And I'm working on that. Well, congratulations. I think that more and more, we need to take back those times. So in fact, like, I used to do scheduling social media at the beginning of my day, like before I went to work. And it was just, it was really not good for my mindset, because you get exposed to stuff that you don't even think about. But like, it turns out your brain, I didn't forget those images that you saw. And so it is a real concern. And at the end of the day, it'd also be on social media too, going, oh, how many people watch my posts or whatever. And now I just put it all into the middle of the day. So I'll try to do something before supper, because before supper is I'm kind of tired already. Like, my motivation's a little bit low, but there's a time limit because I have to eat supper at some point. So it stops me, like, it forces me to stop at some time. Otherwise I don't eat. And I love it. Like, we need that type of motivation, that kind of drive. And I hope that something like this can help motivate you as well. Is just check your time, choose when you're going to do it. City Guy says, that is so true. I do that even when working from home. I barely sleep and use the phone as a distraction to try to sleep, but never do. Oh, trust me, like, I'm guilty. I've been in that boat, like, I don't know how many times. It is so true. And oh man, like, I don't know how many times I've like just like watched the first TikTok and I'm like, yeah, I'll just like stop. No, you will not. Like, for example, the feeds, especially on Instagram, because they have reels. Like, you could literally go on reels, which is just like video after video for forever, right? Like there's no limit to that. I remember even like at some point, TikTok would like show this video of a guy who's like, look, there's always another video. You can take a pause now. And they stopped that. And now they only show yep, it's time to watch some more. And so people have caught on that watch time is what they optimize for. So if you don't put in some limits yourself, like nobody's going to be there to control it for you. Nobody's going to be telling you what to do and say like, oh, you can't watch that. You're not a kid. Like you get to decide how much you watch, but you have the consequences. Like the next day, like you're tired and you just can't do it. This is normal, and so taking that time, putting it into the things that you know are going to have a big impact on your life. You know that certain types of people are more where you want to become, where you want to be. Maybe some of those influencers are helpful, then follow the few that are helpful. But there's a lot of them which are just straight up entertainment. It's not really going to help you. And that's one of the reasons why the continuous feeds, the ones that show videos instantly, which is pretty much every news feed these days, are very hard to control. Very, very hard to control. And that's why you can't just expect that you'll have the willpower just to disable everything. You have to do something explicit in order to control your environment. We're not more powerful than our environment. Who was it? So this is key. And a big part of your environment and what you see is your social media feed. So keep that in mind. Let's see if I got everything. Okay. Those are the main things that I wanted to cover. Now, if you guys have other questions or if you're curious about stuff, like let me know what you're curious about. Or if there was something here that piqued your interest that you think, oh man, we should go into maybe a little bit more depth into this. I would love to cover anything that you found interesting. But that said, I want to let you, let me ask you a question. Okay, so I do have a question. Fantastic. So City Guy asks, let me ask you a question. Do you know of the AI that Facebook created a while back that started advancing so far ahead of itself that it started to create its own language? How freaky is that? Did you work on that? So the natural language processing that Facebook uses, and I imagine a lot of the others use, are based on all the same types of algorithms because Google uses something similar. It's called GPT, like it's techniques related to GPT-3, which is like basically a general like language transformation model that was originally used for things like Google Translate. So you want to take like something from English and you wanted to turn it into Japanese. That was an easy algorithm that you could train. And they got really good, but not only could it do language translation between languages, it could do within the same language translation. So if I just gave it a bunch of like text, for example, I could get it to create other types of text and articles. So if I got it to read a ton of blogs, and I'm talking like millions and millions of blogs, then I could get it to create new blog articles just like that would look and sound very, very much like a person actually wrote them because they are based off of real data from people. I didn't work on those things directly. I'm aware of these things because of the work that I do. But yeah, they like in terms of freakiness, I don't know. Like I think that I wouldn't describe them as freaky. They're just new technologies. And I do think that there are certain things that people are going to be way better at doing than computers and algorithms. And I don't have the expectation that AI is just going to replace a bunch of people, but I do think that people who use AI are going to replace people who don't use AI. And I do think, for people's future careers, like, a little bit about AI, you're going to be way ahead of the pack in terms of, like, let's say, just imagine you worked for Upwork or let's say you worked for Fiverr. If you knew just a little bit about AI and a little bit of how this works, and you knew about how to do like search engine optimization, just some basic skills, you'd be at a huge, huge advantage compared to every single individual on the platform who has no clue of what the algorithms are looking for. And most of it is just, like I said at the beginning, copying the past. So we think, AI is this like, incredible system about predicting the future. No. AI is a very good system of replicating the past. It uses tons and tons of data. Where does that data come from? Our past. And it tries to repeat that. So if there are things like, racist comments, for example, there was a lot of those on the internet at some point in time, and then we changed, then it's just going to repeat that, right? It's not going to change anything for our society. So if we want it to change, then we have to redesign our AI. We have to train it in a different way. And so that's interesting. So didn't work on it, but aware of the technology. It's not just writing, but it's also graphics as well. If you've ever explored Wall-E, no, is that right? Yeah, I think it was like Wall-E. Essentially, it's an image generation database. So in the same way, like we do graphic design, like they could literally like take a bunch of images and merge them together and create something pretty compelling. You go, yeah, I'd like, a chair made in the shape of an avocado, and boom, it would just like generate a new image that has never been created before. Pretty incredible. Okay, so last one. So City Guy says, you've got good presence on camera. This topic is pretty interesting. I hope you take bits of this live and make it into a video on YouTube. You can reach many more people and educate the online community. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. So that's the plan. One of the reasons why I do these live streams is it's kind of like my hero content, and then we'll break it up. And often I turn them into like really short 60-second segments. I turn them into courses as well. What you're listening today is just one part of a much larger Foundations of Artificial Intelligence series. And that's a great opportunity to segue into a little bit of what I'm trying to do next. So it's about something called like just the AI parenting webinar. And so the key here is from the bottom of our hearts, like, thank you so much for joining the AI parenting family. It's been 7 months since I've started this stuff. And it's been an incredible journey, I would say. In fact, like I've learned so much in this process. And, it's been 7 months, and I would say our baby is just about ready. And I'm not talking about like a physical baby. I'm talking about like our product baby. Let's see if this works. Okay, no. So since the beginning, and like I'm talking about an upcoming webinar on a driver's license for the internet. And this is like really designed for like younger kids. Since the beginning of this year, it's been our dream to create an AI curriculum that will help children thrive in the future. Now, I already mentioned with over half of Gen Z workers, they're freelancing on platforms like Upwork and Fiverr. We need to know how to work when our boss is not a person, but it's an AI. They're going to learn how coding is like the new law, and they're going to learn how data is like the new vote in this AI managed world. Now, if you'd like an exclusive sneak peek into my upcoming webinar, you can sign up to be an AI parenting insider to get the inside scoop along with some tools that I'm going to give to you to help move from screen time to quality time. And I want to wish you and your family the best rest of the day. We will see you all next week, where we're going to explore the all-important topic of negotiation with our children using insights from FBI Chief Negotiator Chris Voss. It's going to be a good session. It was a fun book to read. And every time I was reading it, he's talking about like terrorist situations and they're all on the plane and like these kind of things. I'm like, that sounds exactly like my child. Like, I don't know how to describe how many times he described this, but it was like, oh my gosh, yes. And I've tried some of the techniques with my own children, and I found that it's powerful. It's powerful. And I think it's a skill that it doesn't matter if you're a parent. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to have to convince people. You're going to have to get them to turn around, or you're going to have to listen to their perspective very carefully. This is a powerful skill for anyone doing any type of job. And so that's why I'm looking forward to seeing you all soon. And thank you again for joining us. And so we'll see you at aiparenting.live, and we'll see you again live next week. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. We care about you. If you ever have any questions, we're here for you. Just ask a question, send me a message, tweet me, whatever works. We are here to help. Thank you. See you next week.